Hi, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Life, Love, and Spirituality. Many of us have just finished watching the 2024 Olympics, and we were absolutely enthralled with the women's gymnastics team, who performed tirelessly and wonderfully in their performances. Sadly, however, Jordan Childs has been revoked the bronze medal that she rightfully earned. Very controversial situation that's happening even as we speak. I, however, was so happy to know that the women's gymnastics team actually has a therapy dog to help them with situations like this and other stressors that they face, because sports is very competitive and very difficult. And so they have a dog named Beacon, and he is a 4-year-old golden retriever that actually traveled with the gymnastics team to the trials in Minneapolis, Minnesota in June.
Ooh.
He actually has his own little badge, and his nickname is Goodest Boy, and that's why he was allowed on the floor actually during the competition. So therapy animals help people in all kinds of situations, and some of them involve bringing therapy animals to hospitals or schools or various other things. And today with me is one of my dearest friends, Eddye White, and she's brought one of her wonderful therapy dogs, Hunny, to be with us for this interview. But before I chat with Eddye specifically, I have to tell you why she has been such an important influence in my life. About 13 years ago, my mother was dying at Robinson Memorial Hospital, as it was known then, now UH Portage. My mother had serious illness for a very long time, and yet people knew her as loving and caring and kind. They never really knew how much pain she was in. So upon her deathbed, she specifically instructed me, Debbie, I don't want any visitors to come into the room when I'm dying. I told everyone that, yet one day I looked at the doorway, I heard a little knock, and there was Eddye at the door with one of her therapy dogs. I was just about to say, no, don't come in, but my mother opened her eyes, saw Eddye, saw the dog, and waved her over to her. And so Eddye put the dog in my mother's lap, and we were just amazed at how comforting and loving and how wonderful this was for my mom on her deathbed. Eddye then said, Maxine, I want to introduce you to Jessie. Well, at that point, we knew that this was a miracle from God, because Jessie is my mother's name. And that is no coincidence. We certainly felt assured that my mother was going to pass very soon and that she would be with Jessie, her mother, in heaven. I just love Eddye White for just her diligence and that she just disobeyed because she knew it would be good for my mother. One last story before Eddye, I specifically introduce Eddye. I was a teacher at a summer program at a daycare. And this particular summer, the children were absolutely hideous and unruly, and they were mean to each other. And it was really difficult to get anything accomplished because of this. And I had this light bulb went off, and I said, I'm going to call my friend Eddye and see if she'll come out and visit with these children. Well, that's exactly what happened. And the children were about 10, 11, 12 years old. And Eddye sat outside in the grass. We brought the children out. They immediately wanted to pet her dog, and I said, no, we're going to talk a little bit first. And we asked them, what do you think dogs need? You know, what do they need? What is important to them? The children raised their hands. Some said water, some said food, and many of them said love. The dogs need love and care. With that, Eddye said, how many of you realize that the word dog is God spelled in reverse. And she said, God put dogs on this planet to be loving and help people, and people need to care for and be kind to animals. We then went on to say, well, do you think that applies to each other? Shouldn't we be kind to one another? You could literally see the light bulbs going off in these children's minds. We let them pet her dog, and then she left. And I have to say that for the rest of the summer, I'm not saying they were perfect angels, but every time something really mean-spirited or, problematic was going to happen, I said, now remember Eddie, remember her puppy, remember that we're to be kind to each other. So now you know why I love this woman, Eddye White, and her beautiful dogs. And so with us today, we have Eddye and we have Hunny, who is just the most adorable dog, and everyone wants to pet her, it seems, and she just looks so, so, so sweet. So Eddye, tell me about this whole thing that you do with the dogs. What's it all about?
Well, in 2002, I received a magazine from Robinson Memorial Hospital because my husband had been in there, and they sent magazines to patients that had been in the hospital in the past. And the cover showed the director of volunteer and a friend of mine now, Norma Bice, with her dog Pomi, and they started a pet program in 2000, and this was 2002. I did not have a dog, but I wanted to join. So I got permission from my sister-in-law to get her Sheltie, and I had her tested for Pet Partners. At that time was Delta Society, and I tested her, and we passed the test with a complex. And I've been visiting ever since, so it's been 22 years that I've been visiting. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So tell me about this test. Can anybody just call their dog a therapy dog and show up at the hospital or other places? How does that work? Tell folks who may not be aware of how this whole thing works.
Well, Delta Society at the time, now Pet Partners, they have a program where they have a 20-step test that you have to go through.
Wow.
And you have to already have obedience training, and there's evaluators, which we have 3 in our group at the hospital, that evaluate the dogs, and we have to come in and do the testing, and they have to pass the test with a complex or just lost the word out of my mind. They were able to do it okay, but it's not complex. So complex can go into certain areas like ICU and all of those other things. So
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so people need to have their dogs trained.
They have to be trained before they even come in. They have to not have any bite work training at all.
Okay.
They have to have really good manners.
Okay.
And they have to be able to be in a room with a neutral dog without, getting upset or going after the dog, things like that. Mm-hmm.
So it's a fairly complicated procedure.
10 steps of obedience and 10 steps of their testing their temperament.
Wow.
And you can't train their temperament. They're either really nice dogs or they're not.
And not every dog passes.
Every dog passes.
We knew people who tried several times, but it's a variety of dogs.
Dogs. They don't have to be purebreds.
Right.
They don't have to be AKC registered. They just have to have really, really, really good manners.
Okay. So 22 years. Tell us about the dogs that you've had during that particular period of time, and tell us about the reactions that you get from patients who have the dogs come visit.
My first dog was the Sheltie, and I had her there for 7 years.
Wow.
And unfortunately, she passed away. But in the meantime, I got my first Cavalier, King Charles Spaniel, who was Buckeye. And I've had 6 more after him. So, and I just got a new puppy. But it's just like even when you come in the door, not even the patients, you just come in the door and the staff just,
You mean just in the door of the hospital?
Door of the hospital. They just want to pet, just like coming in here. Everybody in the library wanted to pet her before we got up here for the interview. So just see smiles. You see them walking down the hall, and they look at you, and they look at the dog, and they just smile, and things of that nature. Just brings a lot of joy.
Yeah. Well, I know you don't only go to the hospital. Where else do you bring your therapy dogs?
I've been to many nursing homes, also to see friends of mine in nursing homes. My husband was in a nursing home for 5 weeks, so I took them in. I've been to schools, to their library programs, and things of that nature. Take them into Lowe's. Obviously the hospital, but yeah.
Okay.
And,
now what about Kent State or the universities? Is that ever a part of what you do?
I was in a program for 13 years called Dogs on Campus, and then COVID came, and the program no longer exists. But we have gone to their finals testings this past year and last year for their finals, and it's very well received. There's like 8 or 10 of us that go. You sleeping?
Yeah.
And I've been to other schools. I've been to Southeast High School. They had library night, and we know people that work there, and so they invited us to come there and read to the kids get to read to the dogs.
Oh, wow.
You can take them just about anywhere.
I've read about that, about children, that it helps children who are having trouble reading, and when you bring an animal, a dog, in, it just sort of calms them, and then they read to the animals, and it increases their reading capability.
Well, they're not asking much of the kids. They don't tell them they're reading it wrong. They don't correct them if they read it wrong. They just lay there and let them pet them. And
you mean the dog?
The dog, yeah, they just lay there. Sometimes the kids lay there and read. So they never have an issue with the dog. Just like at the hospital, patients, they don't hear bad news from them. They don't get a shot from the dog. They don't, they just get to pet them and smile and feel happy. And they always say, oh, this makes me feel good. My blood pressure went down and all of those things.
Yes. I mean, the therapeutic benefit of animals is undisputed. And we had talked even before my mother passed away. She lived in a senior complex where they didn't allow pets, and my mother petitioned and said, it's been proven that for the elderly and the disabled, caring for an animal just helps the health benefits. And so finally they were able to approve it, and my mother ended up with a big ginormous cat. But she was her therapy. I mean, that cat wasn't friendly to anybody else, but she laid on my mother's lap in her recliner. My mom couldn't get into a bed. She slept in the recliner, and there was her cat Renaissance on her lap,
cute name.
treating, just calming and blessing her, and yeah, so.
Well, we've been to Sarah Care, that was in Hudson. I've been to the Eddye House in Ravenna. I also went to, I can't think of the name, Alter Care in Kent.
Okay, so
and the
seniors.
Kevin Coleman Center.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, they have an all-day program for, their family members that could set them there and have lunch and and have some time to be with other people while they go to work or whatever.
Okay, so the $50,000 question is, why do you do this? I mean, I know how much money and how much time and how much sacrifice and commitment, not only you, but you have a whole group of people that do this similar to you. Why do you do it?
Well, we have 15 people in our group, and not everybody says their reasons, but my true reason in the very beginning was that I wanted to represent my love of Jesus Christ and share them with people. But in the hospital, you're not allowed to talk about that, so I feel like the dogs speak that for me. So that was my ultimate goal.
And see, I never knew that.
Well, see, I surprised you.
That's amazing. And I think when you did speak to the student, the kids that I was talking about, the summer program, that kind of showed there. And that was really the first time I ever heard you say that, and it was so cool. I never thought about that, you know. But the truth is, God does care about people, and He does care about animals, and animals, just as you say, give this unconditional love.
Yep, they don't even have to say anything. It makes someone happy.
Yeah.
It brings joy.
Yeah.
And it brings me great joy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, have I missed anything? Is there anything else that you would like to share about what you do or who you are? Make sure I've caught everything.
You've gotten it all down on paper.
Except I would say that if anyone is interested in doing this, all you need to do is just Google Pet Partners, and you'll be able to find information about the requirements and how all of this works.
And if they have a dog that they know has been trained very well and they want to join our program at UH Portage Medical Center, they would call the volunteer department and ask for Sandy Haskell.
Okay, great.
And then we have evaluators in our group that will do the testing. We do them twice a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, usually in the spring and the fall.
And so I think you're probably a very close group, and you would welcome folks. And is there a age limit for volunteers at the hospital? I forget. I used to work with Sandy.
They have to be 16 with a parent.
Okay.
Otherwise 18. And the dog has to be at least a year old.
Okay.
And you've had to have it for at least 6 months if it was like a rescue or whatever.
Okay.
And usually they don't test very well at a year. That's a little too young, but they just have to have really, really good manners and good training. And then the rest is up to their temperament.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's no age limit of the dogs or the people.
And so this is Hunny, but you have others.
I have 4. I have
right
2
now.
more at home.
Okay.
And the other 3 were therapy dogs that I've lost in the past few years. And I have Savannah, who's 12. Allie, who's 9, and Hunny is 8. It's hard to believe. And I have a new puppy that I probably will try to get in the program in another year and a half.
And tell us about her, because I know you've mentioned to me about her.
Her name is Tigger. Because this is Hunny like Winnie the Pooh. And she can jump about 2 feet high, and she's 9 months old.
Not Hunny, Tigger.
Tigger can jump 2 feet high. Yeah, she can jump 3 feet from the corner of the bed out onto the rug.
So she's going to be a little extra work.
She's going to be a little extra work, yes.
Yeah.
Where Hunny's just my little sweet girl.
Yeah, we see. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you for representing Jesus, as you said, for bringing the joy of dogs into so many people's lives. I mean, you've just helped thousands of people. I know my mother's story kind of epitomizes, but there have been thousands upon thousands of people that you have helped at the hospital and in many other places. And I want to say God bless you for all of that.
The one thing is that we don't know people's names when we visit at the hospital, but one of my stories that I had just recently of a man who's had issues with hearts issues, and we went into the cath lab, and he was going to go upstairs, and he'd just gotten some news, and he just was, the wife was crying, and I said to him, would you like Hunny to go on the bed with you? And I put him in his arms, and he bawled like a baby. And she cried because we had another dog who was a Cavalier, and she held her, and they just cried and cried and cried. And we were there for like 25 minutes. They didn't want us to leave them.
Oh, wow.
So that was very sweet. So Hunny's my sweet girl.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Hunny. I want to say, if you like this video, please check out my other videos on my website, is loveendurasforever.net. And until we meet again, I honestly don't think we're going to have another interview quite as good as this.
Let's have a kiss.
Because Hunny is just a star, as is Eddie. God bless you, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.